subject to actually to follow.
Yes, the entire area of education or raising awareness among young people is something that, to be honest, quite frankly, it's that area a lot of countries, not only Caribbean but in the world by extension, is willing to tackle. Because believe it or not, in Dominica we have persons who still do not believe that climate change is real, really.
Israel. Hmm,
But
hmm.
it is real. So to start there, I believe that the interest of young people need to spark as to why is it important that we need to take care of our environment? Why is it important that we don't throw our trash out there when we're on a bus? Or why is it all there like we stop using plastic bottles and use reusable bottles instead? Why is it that we turn off our lights when we're not using it? Why is it that we turn off the tap when we're brushing our teeth and open it up when we need to use it again? So all these little practices, this is the way to start, to be honest, in terms of education and raising awareness as to climate change and environmental protection among young persons.
What do you think is the role of the media? By the way, you're a media personnel. We'll get into that sometime later. What's the role of the media in disseminating the information, making it even more palatable? Because, like I said, it's a difficult challenge to actually educate people on
Yeah,
climate change. People, especially in our region, yes, we see and feel and experience what we do, and it's a difficult subject to actually comprehend why we're actually getting these backlashes.
definitely. I mean, last month I actually had a conversation as to the media's role in really disseminating information as to healthy food policies, and of course we will touch a bit about that while we move on into the discussion. But of course the media plays an important role. Imagine you are the face, or you are the stalwarts to get this information out there, research and bring it out there. So of course that's where we actually get started, Wadix, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of raising awareness on the issues. If our media really are committed or dedicated to really focus, bringing more information on the climate crisis out there to the general public.
Okay, you actually represented Dominica at the 14th IRENA Youth Forum in Abu Dhabi. That was, I think, sometime last year or this year.
Yeah,
Was it
it was this year,
this year?
last month,
Last month
actually. Yeah,
in Abu Dhabi. Tell us about that experience and what really took place there.
yeah. So the IRENA Youth Assembly is organized by the International Renewable Energy Agency, which is based in the UAE, Abu Dhabi. And of course, every year they host that entire youth conference where they send out a call that a lot of young people get to be selected to attend that conference. And of course, this year we had a total of 100 up to 200 young people from around the world being present, and it was just two young persons from the Caribbean region, me and a guy from Trinidad and Tobago, who actually got involved.
Wow.
Yeah, so the entire agenda for that assembly was focused on renewable energy, or young people's role in really assisting their governments in terms of green transition. Of course, looking at the employment opportunities as to why is it important that young people need jobs in really assisting the system in transitioning to renewable energies and moving away from the use of fossil fuels. And of course, we also engage on a number of other topics related to national development. I was focused on indigenous people's role in green transitioning, as well as I served as an ambassador. So the organization also selected 5 young persons to be youth ambassadors for the entire conference, one of which I was also selected as a youth ambassador and served as their communications ambassador as well, where I assisted them in terms of the area of communications, in terms of posting on their various social media, conducting interviews, and really creating graphics, etc. So, of course, this was basically using my skills, my expertise, and knowledge in terms of assisting them in, reaching a wider audience.
Firstly, let's deal with your role as indigenous
Yes.
people and how you represented the indigenous people, by extension, Dominica at that special conference.
Yeah, I mean, the young indigenous peoples in the entire conversation of climate change is one area that I continue to push for, besides the meaningful youth engagement in decision making processes. I believe that as indigenous peoples, being engaged in these discussions, of course, the United Nations Secretary General recently said that young indigenous people, sorry, hold the knowledge to address in the climate crisis that we currently face. And I believe that is true. So for me, being out there and representing indigenous people or Dominica by extension is one that I really saw an opportunity to get our name out there. And my goal is to one day have Dominica's name out there and have it in people's mind. Imagine you meet a lot of young persons and you say, "Hey, I'm from Dominica," and they be like, "Where is Dominica?" And I'll be like, "We're an island in the Caribbean region." There's like, "I've never heard of Dominica."
Wow.
Yes, so you can imagine. So just me being there plays an important role in terms of marketing Dominica to a certain extent.
This is extremely important. And at that particular conference, you said you were one of two Caribbean
Yes,
nationals, and what the other person was from where?
Trinidad. And
Oh, in
Tobago.
Trinidad and Tobago, and you had to actually get that information across. You had to actually be a representative, basically for the entire Caribbean,
Yes.
not only Dominica. And I mean, I can imagine. But tell us about your deliberation, your part you had to play in terms of you had to give a speech at that particular conference,
Um,
or just to observe what's going on and to make do workshops and that sort of thing. What was the
Yes.
format of the conference?
So the entire conference is broken down in various subsections of the assembly. Whereas if you're interested in, let's say, green jobs in terms of renewable energy, how can young persons be employed? It have a particular session for this one. If you're interested in indigenous people's involvement, has another one. In terms of financing for green transitioning, this was another area. So it had 7 sessions going on at the same time. And my role was to attend every single session and take note of the progress and what was being discussed in order to bring back to the agency who were responsible for hosting the assembly.
With that level of experience that you acquired on that first mission, who you had to report to directly? Was it a situation you had to report to an entity in government of Dominica, or you had to actually represent or give a report to the agency which actually sent for you?
Yes, it was actually the agency that that selected me to attend. I had to present a report during the entire duration of the conference while it was going
But
on.
how this information you acquire is going to further enhance Dominica's position?
Yeah. Well, for me, youth engagement has always been my main area. And for me, I am currently working with a number of young persons and NGOs in really looking at ways we can create dialogues for young people to be engaged in this discussion as to renewable energy and the entire area of environmental discussions and climate action and environmental policy as well. So we're trying to create these spaces so that young people can actually have their voices included.
In terms of, let's say, the government level, do you represent the youth in actually, making some intervention at the national level, at the governmental level? Because you go out there, you get the necessary information, the necessary experience, but how do you transmit that to, let's say, the government officials who then possibly have a policy? Do we have a policy on climate change here?
Yes, we do have a number of environmental policy, and these hasn't been really being considered. But we need to pay close attention to that aspect, to be honest, since we're always speaking about building resilience. Of course, looking at policies plays an important role.
But resilience is a big word.
It is, yeah.
And most times we focus on, let's say, the housing aspect, and that's mainly because we are the Caribbean basin. We are at the basin where we are prone to hurricanes. So we focus on the building, but resilience, how else or what other areas of resilience we should pay special attention to?
Yeah, and I'm happy you actually asked that question. Last year I had a discussion in terms of really understanding what resilience is. I mean, even in the climate space, in the climate advocacy space, there are certain things that you're not aware of. And for me, the entire process has been one that's enriching and educating as well. And for me, I've always been saying that while we're eager to move forward into building resilience in our infrastructural projects and initiatives, building resilience within our people is as much as important at that aspect. Why build resilient homes when, in case that hurricane strike, that the people living inside of these houses do not know what it means to bounce back? I mean, some of us are still traumatized by Hurricane Maria. And I mean, from that aspect, we for sure supposed to have some resilience from that experience in terms of, moving forward. What if another hurricane, we are in the hurricane season, of course, and what if another hurricane like Maria, God forbid, hits Dominica? How are our people able to respond to that?
So psychologically, we need to educate our people more on psychological resilience.
Definitely, yes, Wadix, I totally agree. That aspect is as much as important as building resilient houses.
Because if we go back to reality, quite a bit of people couldn't survive the aftermath of a Hurricane Maria, which is very important.
Yeah.
How you bounce back, not only with just the building, that's a structure, but then psychologically get yourself prepared, because we are going to be faced with this for the rest of our lives.
Of course, yes.
The hurricane season, 6 months, and possibly the way things are, it may even be longer. By the way, some people are bigging you up. Derek Rapiters, the Bouillon Master, Agatha Joseph also want to big you up. Agnes Bolme, that's a very strong and powerful listener. Just want to big you up and congratulate you for the work that you're doing. Yes, psychological resilience. Are we doing enough? Because the mind is so powerful and actually lays the foundation of every aspect of resilience. Are we taking that into consideration, to be resilient psychologically, to be able to actually be resilient in other areas or other facets, to be ready for a true hurricane season or another experience? Because some people say they don't ever want to go for another Maria experience, but we are prone to it. We are in the basin. We heard the forecasts, more than active season is expected.
Yes.
So we always have to be prepared, but then the psychological preparation, psychological resilience is so critical. But do you think that we are prepared psychologically in terms of resilience?
Dominica is very large, Wadix, and of course, covering the entire population would be almost impossible within a short time. But so far, I mean, progress are being made to that extent. Certain parts of Dominica, and hopefully that we'll be able to, develop that approach of train the trainer sort of approach. Train the trainer approach in order to really build resilience from a psychological standpoint.
Okay, someone has a call for our special role model, mentor, speaker, passionate climate advocate, Ferdison Valmond. Let's take the call. Good morning to you, caller. We are not getting clear. Good morning, caller. You could call us and 448-3287. We are actually trying to be interactive. Good morning to you, caller. Are you there? Okay, Creole Heartbeat, you can interact with us. This is live. We are also live once again on DBS Radio Facebook page and YouTube channel, so you could see the 20-year-old climate advocate from the Kalinago territory, who also considers himself as an ambassadorial Kalinago youth, tasked with the mission of speaking out on climate change and the effects on his people. Tell us about your ambassadorial role.
Yes. Kalinago people, for example, our young persons are not really out there per se in these discussions. They're more for it on a national level, but for me, I tend to really stay within the roots.
Yeah.
So being the voice for my people, as I've always said, that every time I got an opportunity to really speak out there or speak on behalf of indigenous people, one of the first persons I always highlight is the continued impact of climate change on Kalinago people and how we as a people are bouncing back to these impacts. So to me, being an ambassador for my people it's very important. It's who I am. It's part of my identity as a Kalinago youth, to be honest.
You in another, as a matter of fact, it's recorded that if a lot of Dominicans practice the proper disposal of garbage and keeping the environment clean and less cutting down of the trees, it would really help the Kalinago people have the backbone to fight against climate change. You made that statement recently. Can you elaborate a little for us?
Yes, so I think I made that statement at COP28 last year.
What was that mission about?
Okay, so the Conference of Parties meaning countries like Dominica, St. Lucia, etc., they gather annually every year in which governments and ministers come together and they negotiate on environmental policies and taking action in terms of really holding those accountable for the climate crisis, really hold them accountable to that aspect. So it was held in Dubai, and of course, out of 1,000, sorry, only 100 only got through, and I was one of the 100.
Wow.
Yes.
Only Dominican again?
Only Dominican.
And in terms of the Caribbean?
It had a number of Caribbean young persons, so for that they tend to really they made it very diverse in terms of the representation of small island developing states.
But you were
like
the only
Dominica.
only indigenous person from the Caribbean.
Yes, yes.
Tell us a little more about that particular
Yes, so
experience.
during that time, we actually got training, a lot of training in terms of climate negotiation and what it means to be a negotiator, or, what do we expect when it comes to negotiating climate policies. And of course, during that time, when it was time to head to Dubai, which was a very long trip, we really got to really understand what it's like being at these conferences. It's very tiring. You're not doing anything, but it's tiring, very, very tiring. You're just walking from one room to another, really looking at how our leaders are negotiating on your behalf. You're joining discussions with young people. And of course, during that time, I also served as a spokesperson for the Children's and Youth Pavilion, one of the subsection of COP28 as well. And even during that time, I was selected, I was the first Dominican, Caribbean, and indigenous youth to really give an intervention at the World Climate Action Summit, which is restricted to young persons.
This is historic, and that's why we want to really emphasize on this, repeat this particular statement, because we are not aware of this, because not all of this sort of information makes the news in Dominica. But then, as a 20-year-old Kalinagri youth, you have been out there representing the nature isle, also representing indigenous people. So just let us make sure that this sinks in, this is recorded, and let's repeat that particular statement.
Yes, so I was the first Caribbean youth, first Dominican and first indigenous youth to be invited to give an intervention at the World Climate Action Summit, which is an event that only leaders attend, restricted to young persons, only by invite. So, of course, I actually gave that intervention. I spoke about indigenous people's role in building resilience. I also call on world leaders to recognize the rights of indigenous peoples in protecting their ancestral heritage and, of course, the land. And why is it important that also young people of indigenous descent and young people as a whole really be engaged in these processes to building resilience?
So there were quite a bit of Caribbean leaders, global leaders at that particular function.
Yes, I actually met the president of Tulavu.
Wow.
I actually got a handshake from that particular leader after my speech. He said, "Thank you so much for saying something that a lot of our leaders and young persons are afraid to say, the reality facing indigenous peoples and small island developing states." And also the Prince of the UAE was actually present during that.
The Prince of?
The Prince of the United Arab Emirates.
United Arab Emirates.
This was something.
Was there any
important.
government representation from Dominica?
Well, our leaders were negotiating within their own separate
Sessions,
yes,
okay.
so it's an entire large event. Our minister was present. He was actually negotiating, and of course our representative, and that activity, of course, was separated for another group of leaders.
Tell us about that speech now, when you actually made that observation.
Yes, so
Go in a little more detail as to that speech, because we want our viewers and listeners to know some of your achievements during those particular important global activities.
yes,
So you had a speech, you had an opportunity to give a speech.
yes. So I actually was selected the day before the speech.
Wow.
So I had a couple hours, because the time in Dominica is different from the time over there.
Yes.
I had a couple hours to write the speech, and I actually put my speech into a Google Doc, and I shared it with over 1,000 young persons from around the world to input.
Wow.
Because I saw the need to actually, as the first young person to receive that opportunity, that it is important that I say the right thing that represents our young people, the reality that we continue to face worldwide, and of course the realities of indigenous people. So I shared that document. I left it open for a couple hours. A lot of young persons inputted, or really...
And you're talking about young people from across the world.
Across the world. It has a constituency within the United Nations from a convention on climate change. agency, whereas it consists of over 5,000 young people worldwide. So I had to share that document with over 5,000 young persons within 3 hours that they can input what they would like me to see. And I got a lot of good feedback in terms of indigenous youth, indigenous peoples, indigenous communities, and of course, young persons. So why is it important that we need to be out there? So of course, I was very grateful for that opportunity. I also got a lot of help from our Miss Dominica, who actually present as well at that conference, and it was really good seeing another Kalinago youth being represented out there. She came with the delegation with the minister and of course the UNFCCC focal point. I also got input from the president of the National Youth Council, who actually present as well, Mr. Firelander, and of course we all know Miss Anika Bellot. Of course, I really got some help with reviewing my speech for that as well. So huge thank you. I never got an opportunity to tell them real thank you, but I just want to say thank you to them for really assisting me in that regard.
Sandra Norris is saying hi to you. Yvette Banis, La Grande Dame de la Chanson Ateliers Ophelia, is also commending you for how eloquent you are for your age. Mamie Thomas, Tamika George,
thank you so much.
Antonelia Doctrove, that's the wife of Billy Doctrove. I'm really commending you on your eloquence. But that particular, a lot of Dominicans practice proper disposal of garbage and keeping the environment clean and cutting down less of the trees. I mean, tell us about that particular area and what you think and why this is so important to us.
I'm very strict in terms of
collection.
I'm very strict in terms of pollution.
Pollution, yeah.
Yes, even at my home, I guess my siblings and my parents really got frustrated of me in terms of telling them to adopt sustainable practices like stop use plastic bags, don't throw your plastic bags there, you can reuse it, stop using plastic bottles and all these things. So I think at this point I maybe sound like a broken record to everyone, to be honest. But yeah, it is important that we really adopt these practices. We have a huge landfill that if we back then really adopted sustainable practices in terms of adopting the 4 R's, reduce, reuse, reclaim and recycle, of course we wouldn't be as much as, this landfill wouldn't be as huge as it is right now, to be honest. So right now we can see the importance of really practicing recycling as well as proper disposal of these of garbage. I mean, we use food peelings and we leave it in the garbage bag to head to the landfill. Why not use it as fertilizer? I mean, that aspect is important as farmers. Well, my parents are farmers, so this is all in me. So yes, also deforestation is real. A lot of people continue to cut trees, and it's very disappointing and hurtful, to be honest, that we continue to see how hard we are impacted by climate change. I walked for 10 minutes in the outside, and it's hot.
The messages are coming. V. Valmond, that's I suspect possibly your relative Anis Etienne, and the messages are coming fast and furious. Yvette Banis, Anis Etienne also. Really commending on the eloquence. By the way, he's only 20.
Only 20.
Only 20. Only 20. So you're talking about deforestation?
Yeah. Deforestation, of course, is an issue that we continue to face. I mean, we can't help it when it comes to hurricane that a lot of trees gets broken, or a lot of trees, are swept away by the floods, by the riverside, etc. But as Dominicans, we need to realize the importance of trees, the importance that they give us fresh air to breathe, that it is actually considered, trees are actually considered the lungs of the world, to be honest. So just by this, we need to really move forward in terms of planting trees. And of course, big up to my Kalinago people, and I have seen some people do that practice. For example, if they cut down a tree, they plant a tree to replace the tree that they cut down. So this practice is very, very important.
So I mean, we have to actually, our habits in terms of how we do things, because there's a major thrust in terms of the construction industry, and while we do so, and by deforestation to actually build, but we should also take into mind, like you say, the trees, they are the lungs of the world. So every time you cut down a tree, it's like you give yourself less oxygen.
Yeah.
Basically, you also made history as the youngest, first Dominican, and first indigenous people to be part of the Climate Champions team. Tell us about the Climate Champions team, my brother. Congratulations again. I have to really give it to you in a very special way.
Alex.
I mean, the first Dominican, the youngest, and first indigenous youth to be part of the Climate Champions team. What is the Climate Champions team for those who don't know?
So the Climate Champions team is a committee of highly trained, interesting, passionate, qualified persons that assist the climate champion. So climate champion is a special person that's appointed every time it's leading up to these huge conferences. So right now we work with the past champion, which is COP20 that happened last year, and the current COP29 that's happening in Azerbaijan. Of course, I will be there this year, of course, in Azerbaijan, representing Dominica and the climate champions. So what we tend to do is utilize non-state actors, that's non-governmental organization, and that's where, moving back to the deforestation and reforestation aspect, that's where persons like the National Bank of Dominica and the many other businesses that continue to, we saw that tree planting initiative that are being undertaken, of course. So these persons we tend to engage as much as possible to really contribute to building resilient livelihoods. So the Climate Champions team it really consists of a lot of subsections. Like we have policy and engagement, we have the communications aspect because that is important. We have Race to Zero, which is Race to Zero. It's all about pollution and really transitioning into green renewable energy. And of course, there's me, Race to Resilience. So Race to Resilience, we have a goal of really building resilience in 4 billion people by 2030. Wow.
Building resilience in 4
billion people by 2030. Yes. So of course, just that aspect, of course, is one that we recognize that plays an important role in building resilience, whereas we allow non-state actors to really contribute. We bring them on as partners and we point them to various areas. And of course, my focus will be on the inclusion aspect in terms of indigenous peoples, women, men, the entire gender lens, and of course, young persons. So I will be contributing 20% of new partners. That's 20 new partners globally, bringing on new partners onto the organization, as well as showcasing success stories of indigenous peoples-led organization, and of course, many other organizations worldwide. I am currently working within the Africa region and Southern Asia and Pacific as well.
Wow. This is, tremendous. I'm so happy. You're saying Winnie Green is saying very eloquent and knowledgeable young man.
Thank you.
Martha Laura is also giving you a special big up. Tina Shillingford also is giving you a very special big up. But how does it feel? First of all, as the youngest and the first indigenous youth, and then we'll get to the Dominican aspect.
Yeah.
But then let's dissect this historic feat, the youngest and first indigenous youth to be part of this champions team. How does it feel? You're representing indigenous people both in Dominica and globally.
Yes.
So how does it feel? You're not only representing indigenous people only in Dominica, but globally.
Worldwide.
How does it feel?
I think my emotions still haven't really come to really get with the message that I was actually selected. Imagine, I was actually selected from 800 applications and only 5 could be selected.
Wow. Let's get this again historically. 800 applications
and only
globally.
5. Globally and only 5 could be selected.
Was selected and you were part of that 5.
Only one from the Caribbean.
And the only one from, this is historic. This is Ferdison Valmond from the Kalinago territory, and you heard him say live. It's live on DBS Radio. From 800 applicants globally, only 5 were selected, and he was the only one from the Caribbean. So as a Kalinago youth, how you felt? As a Kalinago person, you said a while ago you couldn't actually come to grips with the emotions. But then what does that say for the Kalinago people?
It means that they have great representation, that I am able to really explain or express some of the challenges that they continue to face out there in regards to the climate crisis, as well as to look at potential avenues whereas I can bring in global partners that I work with towards the Kalinago people to really invest and really undertake initiatives to build resilience. So for me, it's bridging the gap between development partners and building resilience of our Kalinago people. And I'm happy to say that I have already identified a few partners, of course, to actually come in and undertake a few projects. So, of course, building resilience for us as indigenous people will go much quicker than we expected in the next 3 to 5 years.
Who are some of those partners you have identified and already working with?
Yes, so Wadix, I can only say 2, to be honest. We have the Global Cooking Alliance.
Global Cooking Alliance?
Yes, it's an international organization that focuses on really moving away from the use of the traditional gases that we use to really equipping women. It's a women-focused organization. So for me, it's like building resilience within women, Kalinago women. And secondly, we have Girls for Climate Action. So yes, I am really embracing our Kalinago women, and of course I like to say I'm a feminist, to be honest, in terms I look forward to really, I know it's something that we've always seen in the past, that men are always out there, always being, developed and upheld, and of course for me, I am embracing our woman, Kalinago woman. Okay,
more greetings keep coming in for you, my brother. Janice Coffee Erms is also bigging up in a very special way, and the greetings continue to come in. The young man needs some love, and that's good. Send the love, send the love, send the love. Share the message, because he's only 20 years, by the way, 20 years old, by the way. Very eloquent and very knowledgeable on that very important and very difficult subject. In terms of Kalinago, also Sandra Sayers is also saying special hi. Marceline Edwards is also bigging up in a very special way. Well, you're getting love from Mafalora, I can tell you. Love, and excess amount of love. Why does this young man have a lot of potential to go places? Hope he gets the mentorship and support he needs. Well, I'm giving him 100% of whatever experience I have. I really love his work ethic and his knowledge, his attitude towards getting things done, and is a true representative of what he's doing. I mean, this is a very difficult subject. You hardly find young people getting involved in climate change, and this is so real for us, especially in that part of the world, the Western world, where we are faced with 6 months of turmoil every single year. As a Kalinago youth in Dominica, do you think that you get adequate opportunities to voice your opinion on various subjects?
I can say from
generally, we're talking generally.
Yes, to a certain extent. I mean, there are topics that are too really to that extent too high that they believe I'm speaking globally general, that policymakers tend to not understand we as young people can really break down and explain, to be honest. But I wish there were actually spaces, but there are spaces. So I want to big up a few organizations that have reached out to me to really assist me in really voicing my opinions that are going out there. And of course, one of these is my alma mater, which is the Sineku Primary School, that allowed me to be the featured speaker at their graduation last year. And of course, this year I'm heading to Concord. So a huge thank you to Miss Wheeler Cyril. She's the principal of the Concord Primary School, who invited me to be a featured speaker at the graduation on Friday morning. And of course, we have Project Discovery Dominica. Of course, I will be doing a presentation on ecotourism and climate change from the Dominica perspective. And of course, I'm really looking forward to that. Of course, Wadix, it's really important that I say this, that the support of the Dominican population, the entire public, and of course you, of course, it's very important to me that I get the support of my people. And of course we have been seeing that non-stop. Every post I make, I get a lot of love. So the amount of people that's on the live right now.
Yes. Big Amoy Dupini, Gloria.
We have Rihanna Patterson, of course.
Patterson.
Yes.
They're sending all the love, and as a young person, do you think that, for instance, in subjects such as, let's say, even the present political climate, do you think that you are given the young people and even indigenous people are given the opportunity to take a natural role, a natural part, adequate part into the national development?
Well, from a Kalinago perspective, I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as my Kalinago people, of course, believe the importance of engaging young people in really giving them an opportunity. And of course, we saw that with our youngest chief elected last year, Lawrence Sanford, of course. And of course, they continue to really allow spaces. I know a lot of them really right about now really proposing that I enter into the realm of politics in the future.
We will get into that in a while. We will get into that in a while.
Yes.
But, continue.
Yes, so the engagement has been there. A lot of leaders. I mean, my time when I served as the youth advisor for the resident coordinator for Barbados and the OECS, of course, I really got engaged with the country coordinator, Mr. Marlon Marie, and the entire team. They got me engaged in the conversations. They allowed me to be engaged. I actually sat on the conversation somewhere last year, October, when the government and various stakeholders around the world actually sat at the White House and discussed renewable energy. And of course, I was the only young person sitting at that table among these big boys. So of course, these persons, I mean, these spaces are actually created, and just being there, it really allowed me to really think that, hey, this is a space I want to create. I want to see another young person sitting at this table.
Absolutely, this is fantastic. Any aspirations, political aspirations, or you want to stick to the climate and resiliency?
I think my supporters, of course, said that I shouldn't be distracted. I should stay en route. Yes, I should stick to the climate space. So of course, I'm definitely willing for that. My parents, my family, of course, has been advising me on that aspect. So for now, I must say that politics, I have an eye on politics, but it's not really on my priority list right now.
Okay, but you also play a vital role as young as you are, 20 years, but you're already a role model for the Kalinago people. Tell us about that particular role.
Yes, so just being out there as a young person and being engaged in these discussions and really engaging in these spaces, you would like to see the faces of young persons when you actually said, hey, I've been to Dubai. And they said, Dubai, I wish I could go to Dubai. Dubai is a place everyone wants to go. And really, even speaking about the conversation, like, I tell a lot of young persons as to, hey, you need to adopt practices. Learn to recycle. Plant flowers in the bottles, cut them, plant flowers, etc. And of course, this is important. I actually want to really see that a lot of young people taking my footstep and really, don't be scared of taking risk, to be honest. Like me, I take a lot of risk in terms of attending these conferences. I attend a lot of protests that happen at these conferences in terms of indigenous peoples and policymakers. I'm not afraid to take a risk, and I believe that a lot of our young persons need to really move away from really being scared as to what if I actually stepped out and really go out there and take the step. I mean, I wouldn't be there if I haven't taken the step, to be honest, Wadix.
Absolutely. You're also a journalist.
Yes.
You are a news personality at another radio station. We can say it because that's what you do. You deliver the news at Q95 FM. Tell us about that role.
Yes, Wadix.
And how long have you been in that role?
2 years. 2 years I've been working in the area of news and journalism. Communication is something I have really grown to love, to be honest, despite the place where I work. To be honest, I mean, a lot of people say I have a radio voice for some reason.
You do.
Yes, and I also work in the area of communications as well, besides working at the radio station.
Rhyme want to big you up. Valmond, Nissa August, I suspect from the Kalinago. Patsy also want to big you up. Fenian Frederick, that sounds like a Kalinago name. As a matter of fact, keep up the good work, my friend. So that should be a Kalinago national there, Kalinago person there. But you were talking about your work as a journalist.
Yes, so that aspect I tend to really provide a lot of advice to a lot of NGOs. To be honest, entering the realm of journalism and news reporting has really allowed me to really go further. So now I consult on communications and public relations. I'm currently working with an organization all the way in Cameroon in terms of creating a social media presence, etc., developing a communications plan, a communication strategy, as well as focus on community engagement. How can we allow communities, marginalized communities, to get involved in the organization work that they continue to do? I also served as the public relations officer for the Caribbean Youth Environment Network. This is an organization that's significantly assist me in developing myself. They actually allowed me to do a presentation, a TED talk on loss and damage in Dominica.
Okay, and you also work with the business community, the young entrepreneurs also. You have a special program actually dedicated to the young entrepreneurs. You could tell us about that also?
Yes, so it's
and
called...
how dear it is to you, how important it is.
So it's called the Nature Isle Small Business Buzz program. It's hosted on QFM every Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 to 5 p.m. And of course, a huge thank you to Archipelago Trading, Beacon, Agents of Beacon Insurance Limited, for coming on board and really supporting me in that venture. I tend to provide a platform for entrepreneurs to really get out there and showcase their product, because I believe in economic empowerment and financial independence, especially for Dominicans and young persons, and I believe that this platform would really assist Dominicans. Of course, we have had a number of people on that program. We have been getting good feedback, and of course, even within Wadix, the entire guest of entrepreneurship, we also bring NGOs on board, because we tend to be very diverse and tend to be, let's stop talking business for 1 minute and let's talk about volunteering and really developing your skills. So for me, it's also contributing, besides contributing to the SDG 13, which is climate action, but also contributing to a lot of the other SDGs.
In one of our conversations, I remember you told me that quite a bit of a quite high percentage of some of those young entrepreneurs are female.
Yes.
And this was kind of concerning to you that our females in Dominica takes bolder steps, whereby our men continue to be marginalized and sidelined, possibly for their own fault.
Yes. I mean, we have a culture in Dominica whereas men are supposed to be the breadwinners, and we often call for that for years, that hey, we need women employed, women to really hold getting their own money from their own pockets and non-dependent on men. But we go too much we focus too much on women, that now the entire entrepreneurial landscape in Dominica is focused on women and the men are left behind. So right now we're thinking of ways in which we can really address that issue. I spoke to an organization last month in terms of having that entire discussion and looking at ways we can undertake initiatives that would empower men financially and economically, and of course, moving away from that eye on the boss sort of mentality, and really working closely with their wives and girlfriends, etc., to really work together and develop their family.
But I mean, it's interesting that quite a bit of women are taking the risk in terms of entrepreneurship, and they are taking the risk. They are taking the first step towards making that move. And the data that you actually revealed to me, to my mind, is alarming. Somewhere over 90% of entrepreneurship in the landscape that you were given from the organization NDFD were women, over 90%. This is alarming. What our men are engaging in?
I think first off, the majority of products that are being produced by these entrepreneurs are nature-based. We have year products. We have men into creating natural, authentic alcohol, jeans, etc. And we have men into craft, etc. So majority of these persons are more involved into agriculture. Now, this leads us to the question as to how can we create ways in which men can actually be interested in developing the agricultural sector. I mean, that's where it all, gets started, especially young persons. How can we get young people engaged in the agricultural sector? And of course, Wadix, I'm not sure if you have been seeing, but this year we have a number of camps that are actually focused on agriculture. We have the Dominica State College with the Axe Camp. We have a number of organizations. Sorry if I'm not able to pronounce the organization. We also have Innovate My World organization having a free sustainable camp this year in Castlebrose together with Barney's Farm. Barney's Farm, of course, is focused on climate smart agricultural practices and sustainable practices in agriculture. So, of course, all these organizations continue to play a huge role in really developing the interest of young people into the agricultural sector.
But then the men, I mean, if you look around, you see quite a bit of men idle. If you look at the capital city on any given day, quite a bit of the young men, young, strapped
Mm-hmm.
men that are in the productive years are idle. How can we, what sort of programs you would recommend that we could, include in what's taking place, even possibly from the government national level, to try to entice, to encourage these young men to get off the streets and get productive?
Yeah. So I'm really going to start on an idea that I recently saw, which is the OECS Youth in Agriculture Symposium that will be happening this year in Dominica.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is a huge step in creating an avenue for young persons to be engaged, and really looking at the entire way in which we can get men engaged. It's a very complex area, to be honest. And all I'm going to say is that we need to really look at ways in which we can make agriculture sexy to our men. Really
I love that
attract
word,
them.
sexy.
Yes, a lot of people tend to use that word. Yes,
appealing,
yes,
sexy, attractive to the young men, because it's alarming. Even when you actually do a survey at the state college, you see some 95% of who actually are engaged and who actually enrolled
Yeah.
in the college are women. Very small percentage of men. I mean, this is alarming for the future of Dominica's development. But let's suppose, there is the agricultural industry. Possibly it's a more physical, because quite a bit of women are in agriculture
Yes,
in Dominica.
that's true.
But possibly this could be, according to your sexy approach, and attractive enough to get quite a bit of young men attracted to this particular program.
Yes, I mean, even creating access to market products, that's one of the main issues that we currently face. I mean, there are access to markets, but not adequate to meet the level that we want to achieve in Dominica. So I think first we need to start off there in terms of creating the right ways or the right streams in which, if I plant cucumbers and you plant tomatoes, then you will be able to get access to your market. I'll be able to get access, because if your cucumber is getting access and my tomatoes stay there, what else? We also need to embrace agro-processing. That, of course, is important, because we have a lot of it's mango season. A lot of mangoes keep wasting. Imagine what we can do with that. We can create jams. We can create leather with mango peeling. So all these things we need to look at.
Go back to the Kalinago territory. I spoke to a major businessman recently, and he was speaking about the cassava. The cassava product, which could be a huge, a huge sell for the Kalinago people. Get quite a bit of the Kalinago people involved. What's your opinion on this? Because there are several byproducts of cassava.
Yes, definitely. I mean, cassava, for one, if you did not know, now you know that cassava is the most resilient plant in agriculture, of course. And of course, we have seen our Kalinago people really embracing that aspect. We have the cassava drink. Have you tried the cassava drink, Wadix?
No, never.
You need to.
You should get me one, man.
you-
Get me a try. I need to. Get me a cassava. Cassava wine. What do you have? Cassava beer. What do you have?
We have drinks. We have food, Wadix.
Okay,
we have
cassava.
everything.
I know
to be
the
honest.
farine. I know the bread. But then what else do you have?
I heard they're actually trying out a wine, to be honest.
Cassava wine.
Yes.
Wow.
So of course, these areas.
If you sell it with some aphrodisiac, it will go off the shelf. Aphrodisiac purposes. But then very importantly, we're thinking in terms of employment for the young people. Stop being idle and get waste. But I think that would be an excellent. Let's see if we can get the adequate machinery to actually produce several byproducts of the cassava, which you said, like for your studies, the most resilient plant.
Yeah.
And it's produced in the Kalinago territory, in abundance. Let's look at recommendations. First of all, let's deal with the Kalinago people. If in case you would have to look, as a young person, a young advocate, at the issues faced by the Kalinago people, what are some of the recommendations you would like to see addressed, or you would like to make to appeal to, let's say, our nationals first, and even, let's say, central government?
Yeah, I think access to financing has been our main issue from way back when. Our lands can't be used as collateral to get loans from banks to develop ourselves. So I think the entire area of poverty, air quotes, poverty, using poverty in air quotes, right there, Wadix, that this is where it all started. So adequate financing, access to financing. There are financing, but the the requirements to access these financings are still an issue that we continue to face. So of course, making access to financing really easy, but of course, keep on holding the standard at which you want persons to access these loans. And of course,
Before
really
you continue with some of the recommendations, let's big up Diana Libla, who want to big you up. Rihanna Patterson, Christabel August, that sounds like a Kalinago person again. Diana Libla, just want to touch base with you. Shanice George, also just want to touch base with you. Desmond Abraham, also just want to big you up. But this is extremely important, to how you could get the Kalinago people more involved. So financing is one of those recommendations. What else?
We need to really look deeply at the agricultural sector. Well, like I said, I'm going to be quite frank that the same people keep getting the same assistance over and over again. We need to look at people who are actually interested in developing the agricultural sector on a community level within the area. So of course, we stop giving the resources. So resources need to be adequately distributed to people who really need it. One set wouldn't allow any sort of development or economic empowerment, economic movement in the area. So of course, the sharing of adequate resources is one that needed. And of course, taking a really close look at agriculture in terms of how we can get our young people involved in the agricultural sector. And of culture is an area that will continue to face. Of course, that area needs to be developed.
Culture.
Yes.
Yes.
Culture.
Elaborate a little.
Yes, we need to. Well, I think a lot of persons had the vision to really integrate the Kalinago culture into schools, and of course that area needs to really go really deep. Of course, there is a Kalinago book, but we need that Kalinago culture, the Kalinago language, the Kalinago dance, the Kalinago food, etc. within our schools. So, like, let's say for Creole Day, Wadix, we don't only celebrate Creole Day on that day. We wear a Kalinago outfit, like me. We wear that for Creole Day. We only wear our madras, etc. But we as Kalinago people need to also embrace our culture as much as we embrace the African culture, to be honest.
Is the Kalinago people or the Kalinago people accepted as they should, in your opinion, or there needs to be more of the equilibrium needs to be shifted or more balance, in your opinion?
It has taken a huge shift, Wadix. We have our first president, which is a Kalinago woman, of course. That, of course, is a huge step in terms of recognizing the importance of Kalinago people in decision-making processes, of course.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to generally now. Young people recommendations, so young people, in your opinion, and how can we possibly get policies or stronger policies, educational areas for climate? You're a climate advocate. How can we get the nation more into that? Finally, as we round up, we see Dr. Miguel has just swung, in a kind like a Gary Sobers, Brian Lara sort of way. But then this is just the final question before we go over to him.
Yes, of course. The government expressed the hope that to develop an environmental curriculum within the education system. So, of course, I would really recommend that they take a closer look at that. And, of course, the idea Rihanna actually proposed, it's to develop a youth consultancy board within each ministry. And, of course, this will also help you develop or expand on your youth agenda within your every ministry. So, of course, we need to start there in terms of meaningful youth engagement before we go there.
Youth consultancy board in every single ministry.
Every ministry to support the ministers and the work that they continue to advise them on the work that really, aim towards young people. This is where meaningful youth engagement starts before we go out there and really calling for to be engaged in this discussion. We need to start it from our, habitat don't carry it abroad. So let us start it in our home and then we'll carry it abroad.
Absolutely, and I'm super proud of you. I'm really super proud of your achievements so far. Just 20 years, and the work that you have been doing and continue to do to really represent the Kalinago people and Dominica by extension. I really want to congratulate you live, and really want to encourage you to continue to do what you're doing. Final words before we leave?
Yes, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who continues to support me one way or the other. It's either virtual or really contacting me and getting me engaged in your activities, etc. And of course, if you're open to any initiatives, activity that you'd like me to be engaged with you, you can of course send me a message on my social media. That's Ferdison Valmond on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to. Let's look at ways in which we can collaborate. Right?
Congratulations once again to you, Ferdison Valmond, 20-year-old, the first Kalinago to represent the climate champions team. Out of 800 participants, one of 5. This is historic. Let us continue to really embrace this, brother. We're looking forward to big things from you. It's over to Dr. Miguel Abadi, another edition of Creole Heartbeat. Until next week, I'm Prince Walix. May God bless you, and may God bless Dominica, the sensational and dynamic Dr. Miggs. It's coming up next on your nation station, TBS Radio.
Prince Walix. Pas pour arrêter, pas mon frère, là, yon mange à quitter la vie.